Today, we're diving into one of the most explosive intellectual battles of the Reformation, and it all centers on one single, powerful question. Are you truly free to choose your own salvation?
In one corner, you've got the celebrated humanist scholar Erasmus of Rotterdam. This guy was the intellectual titan of his age. And in the other corner, the fiery reformer Martin Luther. Back in 1525, Luther published this absolutely devastating rebuttal to Erasmus called The Bondage of the Will. It's a book he actually considered one of his most important works, ever.
So to really get how Luther tries to just dismantle the whole idea of free will, we're going to follow his argument through 5 key stages. First, he goes after the definition itself. Then he actually turns Erasmus's logic against him. Third, he totally reinterprets what God's commands are for. Fourth, he gets into this idea of God's 2 wills. And finally, we'll see his ultimate verdict. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so Luther's first move, it's a classic debate tactic. He doesn't jump into arguing about scripture verses. No, he starts by attacking the very foundation, Erasmus's definition of free will. So Erasmus defines free will as this kind of inherent power inside of us to choose the path to salvation. A capacity to apply ourselves to lean one way or the other. Seems pretty reasonable, right? Well, for Luther, this definition is basically dead on arrival.
Luther says the problem is the term itself. He calls it one of many inflated and lofty terms of empty sound. He's basically saying, look, when you and I hear the phrase free will, we don't think of some small, limited capacity. We think of absolute, total, unrestrained freedom of choice, the ability to do whatever we please toward God.
And this gets to the very heart of his theological problem with it. Luther argues that true free will, that absolute freedom, well, that belongs to God and God alone. For a human being, a created being, a servant, as he puts it, to claim that term for ourselves is like assigning divinity to ourselves. The title just doesn't fit.
Okay, so what's Luther's next move? This is where it gets really clever. He's not just going to argue against Erasmus, he's going to make Erasmus argue against himself. His goal here is to show everyone how Erasmus fatally contradicts his own logic.
And what's so brilliant about this tactic is that Luther doesn't even use his own words. He uses Erasmus's. He points to the part of Erasmus's own writing where he admits that after the fall of man, the human will lost its liberty, is compelled to serve sin, and, this is the crucial part, without God's special grace, it cannot will good. And there it is, the contradiction laid out for all to see. On the one hand, Erasmus's definition says the will has the inherent power to apply itself to salvation. But on the other hand, his own opinion says the will has totally lost its liberty and cannot will good. It's like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, and it's all happening inside the same argument.
You can almost hear the sarcasm just dripping from Luther's pen here, can't you? He's pretty much saying, hey, congratulations, Erasmus. You've just ascribed a free will that is by your own admission a slave. For Luther, Erasmus has defined one thing, but he's defending another, and in the process, he's accidentally proven Luther's point for him.
So this obvious contradiction then builds to what is maybe Luther's most radical reinterpretation of all. What are we supposed to do with all the Bible's commands? The ones like choose life or keep my commandments.
Now, Erasmus and pretty much everyone else pointed to commands just like this one as clear, common-sense proof that we must have the ability to obey. It makes sense, right? Why would a just God command us to do something that's completely impossible for us? That would just be cruel.
But Luther, he just flips this entire line of reasoning completely on its head. He asks a totally different question. What if the commands aren't there to prove what we can do? What if they exist for the exact opposite reason?
And this is a complete game changer. Luther argues that God gives us commands that we cannot possibly fulfill on our own, precisely to force us to see our own spiritual bankruptcy. The law isn't a ladder we're supposed to climb to get to God. It's a mirror that shows us just how fallen we are and how desperately we need someone to rescue us.
So for Luther, the law is basically like a divine diagnostic tool. It confronts us with this impossible standard, and when we try and inevitably fail to meet it, our pride gets crushed. And it's only then, when we realize we can't save ourselves, that we're finally ready to be saved by God's grace alone.
This brings us to Luther's most profound and maybe most challenging idea. He uses it to solve a huge theological puzzle. If we can't choose, then why does the Bible even bother offering salvation to everyone?
To answer that, Luther makes this really important distinction. He says there's the preached God, that's the God revealed in the Bible, the one who sincerely offers mercy to all and wants everyone to be saved. This is the God we're supposed to engage with. But then there's also the hidden God, whose secret will we can't possibly understand, who works all things according to his own hidden purpose, and we're not supposed to understand that will, only to revere it.
As Luther puts it here, our job is to listen to the revealed word, the one that offers grace. It's not our job to try and pry into the secret decrees of God's hidden majesty. You could say we're supposed to deal with the invitation, not worry about the final guest list. So, where does this all lead? After dismantling the definition, exposing the contradictions in his opponent's argument, and totally reinterpreting the purpose of God's commands, what is Martin Luther's final verdict?
Well, he concludes that for us, for fallen humanity, free will is basically a fiction. It's an empty name for a liberty that's been totally lost. The human will isn't free. It's in bondage to sin. Any good it does is purely the result of God's grace working in it. For Luther, true freedom isn't the power to choose, but being set free by God from the bondage of sin.
Luther's argument absolutely shook the world 500 years ago, and it leaves us with a really profound and honestly an unsettling question today. If our choices aren't entirely our own, how should we think about things like blame, praise, and the very foundation of our moral world?